to get some input, but those things are specifically telling me not to bring up and put out there. But I'd like you guys to, you could maybe have heard it from a community member or someone else that something's been brought up, and it's fine, I'm kind of happy with that, and so I would want these things out there, but I'm not necessarily going to mention it in the board meeting. Walking through the situation, 2 boys basketball managers quit, so they were actually girls, but they were managers for the boys basketball team. They quit. It wasn't really clear on why they quit. There were rumors that they didn't get along with the coaches, or that there had been bad breakups with boyfriends who were on the basketball team. The coaches, when they quit, were told, the girls told the coaches that they had a busy schedule, and that's why they quit. Later on, one of the managers told an assistant principal that they quit because of a truth and dare game that was going on the bus back from a game. It had gotten sexual, and also in there it was mentioned that the coaches were within 3 seats. The principal investigated using the bus video and discussion with some students and the coaches. The coaches did have to tell the girls to move when they were on the bus. And then the other thing that plays into it a little bit was that 2 of the boys had an incident the year before with doing something to a 3rd boy in the locker room, and they were suspended for 10 days last year. This situation, I guess I'll probably get into that as I describe the next part, but the other parts I put out there that were just some assumptions that I made, and this is maybe taking a path of least resistance, but I think it's a different factor whether this is just something that's happened in the last week or in the last 5 days, or if this is something that's happened, 2 to 3 weeks ago, and it's been dealt with, and then the community's kind of brought it up. Does that make sense? So with that, then.
Okay, all right, well, we'll call the meeting to order.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to suggest that we do not go into closed session. Speaking with legal counsel, they said that going into closed session would not be a great idea at this point, and so I'm just going to suggest that we stay in open session, and I can update everyone with some general facts about a situation that's come up.
Okay, all right.
Just walking through the facts of what's happened recently. I've been made aware of it and want to make sure to keep everyone on the board included too. Be that there was an incident that happened on the bus a few weeks ago, involved some students, and when the principal learned of it, he took appropriate actions, definitely followed through with an investigation, went ahead and disciplined the students, and then since that time I've also been made aware of the situation, and so I've gone ahead and just followed up with it too. Mainly on my part, speaking with the parents to go ahead and get their input from it. At this point, the parents involved feel that the situation's been resolved. However, it's something that I believe that's still being talked about in the community. So if you haven't heard about it by now, it's not going to surprise me if you would hear about it in the near future, and I'd rather you hear about it from me if possible.
Before you go on, can I ask what our attorney said regarding why this wouldn't be closed session?
Sure. The big thing that he spoke to me about was at this point there hasn't been an appeal on the suspension, and with there being no appeal on the suspension, he suggested not going into closed session, mostly with the fact to keep everyone here objective if anything would go down the road. Trying to think where I was at.
Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. I'm sure that's going to happen at some point.
For the record, it does. More than you realize.
Again, when I contacted the parents, they were supportive of the situation. Didn't really want us to take it any deeper at this point, and so at this point, I do want to go ahead and follow through with what's been done at this point. In terms of actions going forward, we have looked at adjusting what supervision will look like on the bus. Before and after games, anytime, really this is also going to affect us, just with our general busing routes during the day too. So that at this point there would be no action that is actually needed. It's just been pretty much informational, and then if you do have questions, please contact me and let me know about them. beyond that, just supporting the school district if you do hear anything.
Other than adjusting supervision on the bus, is there any other actions that you or the administrative team has made to ensure that? And then the next question is what systems in place to ensure that this is happening? So for example, you said we're gonna adjust supervision. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that that's happening?
I'll leave it up to the principal. The principal and I have discussed how that's going to be adjusted with the coaches that are on the bus, and then would leave it up to the principal to go and supervise and follow through if that happens.
Is there anything in the scenario that would fall under a anti-bullying scenario
So,
/ hazing?
and this is where I would probably say in an open session, there's things that I probably wouldn't discuss, but there's discussions I'd like to have with board members maybe outside it. This question in the open session, up to the investigation at this point, I haven't found anything that is going to fall under the bullying situation or any type of harassment situation.
What other questions do we have?
And if you guys don't mind, I wouldn't mind closing out the board, and then there's things beyond that I talked to our legal counsel about that said if it's not in an open forum that I might give more information about to board members, but not necessarily in open session, or definitely not going to closed session. Does that make sense?
So are you recommending going into closed session?
No, I'm not.
You're not.
But after
So you
the
want
board
to have
meeting's
some
over and you adjourn,
I
we
see.
might-
Okay. Yeah, that's, yeah, I'm not sure you want to say that out loud.
I think this is those conversations occur way before the table.
Yes.
You send an email out updating board members. One of the great tips I received was BCC the board members so that they can't reply all, because there are times where it's appropriate for the superintendent to communicate certain
Yes.
pieces of information. Sometimes just celebratory, sometimes it's other information, but when it's sent to yourself and then BCC the board, so if a board member replies and they accidentally hit reply all, it doesn't go to everyone, it just goes to you. Because you don't want to put board members and the board in a position where just by accident, now you create a open meeting type of violation. And so some of these conversations can happen away from the board table.
Yeah,
You're
we get it.
updating board members
Yeah.
on controversial items.
We get weekly reports outside of anything that would be special. It's just kind of an FYI type of thing. Sometimes it's celebratory, sometimes it's benign, sometimes it's, hey, this is coming up or something.
And we're real purposeful at the end of the board meeting. Our board secretary, she's adamant about this. When that board meeting ends, because our board, they'll want to stand around with each other and start talking about things. She'll say, you guys need to
Shoot.
Get that,
Yeah.
because you can't
No more than 3.
adjourn the board meeting and then all the board members stay in there and start talking about school stuff.
through the board president, though, sometimes does the superintendent have a conversation with just one board member to inform and update them
Yeah.
and ask those questions.
And this scenario may be a little difficult to play out this way because of all those other backside conversations. He showed me a letter that I supposedly or communicated when he was replying back to me as board president. That stuff does happen often. And sometimes I'll get a call from our board president, saying, hey, like X, Y, or Z. It gets really tough because you can't circumvent the rules of open meeting laws and of what you're bound to share or not share.
And superintendents are balancing competing goals in some ways, right? I mean, you're balancing transparency, which you're trying to show, right? But your form of transparency became almost like just disclosure in its own way, right?
Right.
So to be careful about, well, my lawyer said this,
Right.
right? In open session, probably you're better off just following your lawyer's direction as opposed to discussing exactly what he told you. Or
If
she
you've
told
got the
you.
news media listening and saying, oh, they're contacting a lawyer now, I might want to find emails and these things that are, it just opens that door.
Right, which is why I asked, why is he recommending this?
Right.
Because that was a big red flag to me as a board member. So we typically say you can't talk about students or employees and, consent.
If I'm
Is this
being
even
honest.
something you would talk about at an open session? I mean, if it's been handled and the parents are okay with it, and I'm just.
I wouldn't-
thinking,
I
why?
would not think so, which is again why I asked
Yeah.
the question.
Parents can request it to be an open session.
But the parents were saying
the
they
parents were
were
okay.
satisfied and they kind of
Yeah.
wanted it to die.
So wouldn't it
Well,
just be
then-
handled at the building level then?
It wouldn't be even handled at the board table.
I wouldn't even.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
Yeah,
even-
no, yeah, no, it's-
Or-
Yeah, yeah.
or-
Unless you wanted to add an associate to each bus and
Well,
you needed board approval for that.
Well, there are those types of things where you would say, yeah, we're gonna add cameras or other types of disciplinary or
Right.
things but that's like
Business.
yeah, you don't start with,
The content.
the cloud, yeah.
That was the input I got from everyone too, was that I would not bring this up in any way, shape, or form unless you have to, and they were pretty specific
I
about
would-
not closed session.
I'd inform the board, but I wouldn't do it at the board.
Right, that's exactly right,
Oh,
that's how, yeah,
sure.
right, and that's how it happens.
No surprise, right? Because if this pops up with a board president, like some of the community comes up to them and says, hey, did you hear on the bus? And the board president's like, oh, okay. And then what's the first call gonna be? It's gonna be to the superintendent.
And
And if the superintendent isn't aware of it, the first call is gonna be to the principal or the AD and know, why didn't I know about this?
And anytime it touches athletics, it is a ticking time bomb.
So the last thing you need is one of these girl dads filling out their comment card and being the first 5 minutes of the board meeting and saying, hey, what happened here and all of that. And now we obviously can't comment on the board, we just sit and nod our heads and can't say anything. But then everybody else is looking at us, what do they know?
Mm.
You know, like it just, it's interesting.
All right? Tough one, good.
Yeah, this is a tough one.